All right, here's a big question to start us off. What if we could train an AI, not just to do tasks for us, but to truly understand the most complex thing we know of, which is, well, us. Today, we're doing a deep dive into exactly that. It's based on a scientific study called The Importance for AI to Understand Human Nature, exploring how AI can, really grasp what makes us tick.
Yeah, and our mission here really is to unpack how this study provides a kind of foundational blueprint. It's about enabling AI to interact with humanity ethically, effectively, moving way beyond just simple programming to a genuinely nuanced understanding. Think of it like giving AI the ultimate user manual for humanity, but a really complex, multi-layered one.
And the scope is huge, isn't it? We're pulling insights from, well, millennia, philosophy, cutting-edge psychology, evolutionary biology.
Political theory, even game theory.
Exactly. It's basically a journey to figure out our own essence so we can, build that sophisticated user manual for AI.
Precisely.
So let's start maybe by unpacking how humans have even tried to define themselves historically. It's a long debate.
Oh, absolutely. For centuries, you had ancient and medieval thinkers who mostly believed in a kind of fixed essence for humans.
Like the Greeks, Plato, Aristotle.
Exactly. They often defined humans as, the rational animal or the political animal. They saw our nature as having a built-in standard, a purpose.
A blueprint.
Yeah, a blueprint. Like Aristotle's idea of our ergos, our work or function, being to actualize our soul using reason. It's like a seed's purpose is to become a tree.
Okay.
And Judeo-Christian thought added layers to humans as unique creations, free will, but also this idea of a fallen nature needing redemption.
So the takeaway from that whole era was this really strong belief in a fixed, stable human nature, a foundation for everything else.
Very much. A powerful, enduring conception. But then things changed dramatically.
Right. The modern era flips the script.
Completely. That whole idea of a fixed nature comes under attack, replaced by this concept of our, incredible malleability.
Rousseau's famous line comes to mind.
We do not know what our nature permits us to be.
Exactly.
That's a huge turning point. Then you get Marx arguing our nature is shaped by economics, by history.
Like class struggle.
Right. And Darwin, of course, with evolution. That really historicized us, showing humans as products of this ongoing, contingent process, not some timeless form.
Which leads to existentialists like Sartre.
Saying existence precedes essence. You aren't born with a purpose. You define yourself through your choices. You're radically free.
Okay, but these aren't just abstract philosophical arguments, are they? You mentioned they connect to power.
Absolutely. That's what's so fascinating. These debates are deeply tied to justifying political power. If you argue for a fixed, maybe hierarchical nature, like some read Aristotle, well, that can prop up an aristocracy.
Or Hobbes, believing we're inherently selfish.
That justifies strong authoritarian rule to keep order. And Rousseau's idea of us being good but corrupted by society, that can fuel revolutions. So the key insight for AI here is critical. It can't just be programmed with one definition. It needs a meta-level understanding. Meaning it needs to understand how these different definitions have been used historically to legitimize power, to challenge it. Its job isn't to pick the right one.
But to model the consequences.
Exactly. To model consequences under multiple competing theories, to help us see the hidden assumptions in our own political debates today.
That's a really powerful idea, AI understanding the debate itself. And psychology adds even more layers, right? More fine-grained detail for this AI user manual.
Oh, definitely. Think about Freud. He argued our real drivers are unconscious, often irrational sexual aggressive impulses. Reason is secondary. We're in constant internal conflict.
The id versus the superego.
Right. Then, total opposite, you get behaviorism.
Yeah.
Skinner and others just rejected internal states altogether.
All about observable behavior, conditioning, reinforcement.
Yep. Human nature is highly malleable, shaped purely by the environment. Then came humanistic psychology, Maslow, and his hierarchy of needs.
The pyramid, right. Basic needs first, then growth needs like self-actualization.
Exactly. It gives AI a structured way to think about motivation, how priorities shift based on circumstances.
And more recently, the cognitive revolution.
Viewing the mind as an information processor. But crucially, uncovering our cognitive biases, those predictable glitches in our thinking.
Which we all have.
We all do. And finally, social psychology, hammering home just how profoundly social we are, how much others influence our thoughts, feelings, actions.
Okay, so with all these different, sometimes conflicting views, how does an AI actually integrate them?
The study proposes a robust, multimodal framework. It sees human nature as having 4 key interconnected components.
4 components, okay.
1, innate dispositions. Think biological evolutionary factory settings, capacity for language, social bonds, basic emotions, maybe hierarchical thinking.
Nature, yes.
Kind of. 2, fundamental needs. Maslow's hierarchy is useful here. It helps AI predict priorities like why a famine-stricken society cares more about food than abstract rights.
Makes sense.
3, cognitive architecture. The mind as an info processor, yes, but critically, including those built-in cognitive biases.
Yeah.
We're not purely rational.
Definitely not. And 4.
Social malleability. Acknowledging how profoundly culture, learning, social interaction shape us. It's that constant dance between nature and nurture.
So the big takeaway for you listening is that an AI needs this kind of 4D view. It needs to see a person as biological, psychological, cognitive, both rational and irrational, and deeply cultural all at once.
Exactly. That nuanced understanding is the absolute baseline for any AI trying to meaningfully interact with or, improve the human world. Without it, it's flying blind.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. The study identifies a central organizing principle for all this complexity. This dynamic tension, this duality between cooperation and conflict.
Yes. And it's not just, good versus evil. It's more fundamental than that.
How so?
Well, cooperation is about actions benefiting others, often at a personal cost, altruism, teamwork, that sort of thing. It's the glue holding societies together.
And conflict.
That's driven by competing interests, resources, status, group rivalries, from arguments to wars.
Okay, seems straightforward.
But here's the twist. They are deeply, deeply intertwined. The same loyalty that fuels amazing cooperation within your group
can fuel violence against other groups?
Precisely. That dynamic interplay, that push and pull, that's the engine driving human history.
And you start seeing this pattern everywhere once you look for it.
Everywhere. In philosophy, Hobbes saw perpetual conflict, Marx saw cooperation. Psychology talks about internal conflict, but also in-group versus out-group dynamics.
Evolutionary biology explaining altruism.
Through things like kin selection and reciprocity, which inherently define who we cooperate with and who we might conflict against. Sociology, political science, it's all about managing self-interest versus the collective good.
And international relations is basically built on this, right? Realism versus liberalism, war versus diplomacy.
It's the whole story. And it impacts every level of life. Your own internal struggles between personal gain and belonging. Community rivalries built on that us versus them.
And globally, nation-states competing, but also needing to cooperate on massive threats like climate change or pandemics.
Exactly. Which leads to a critical directive for AI. You can't just tell it, promote cooperation.
Why not?
Because the very psychological tools we use for cooperation, like intense group loyalty, shared beliefs, are often the exact same mechanisms that fuel conflict with outsiders.
Ah, okay. That's tricky.
It is. So the most effective AI interventions wouldn't be about generic niceness. They'd need to be much smarter.
How?
By targeting the underlying mechanisms of identity and group boundaries. Imagine an AI that could spot dehumanizing language online and suggest ways to counter it with stories emphasizing shared humanity.
Or platforms designed to downplay divisive labels.
Exactly. Helping bridge divides at their psychological root. That's the real potential.
Let's dig even deeper then into our sort of evolutionary programming. Beneath the philosophy and politics, there's our biology, our stone-aged mind, as the study puts it.
Yes, these evolved mechanisms still profoundly shape us. Take altruism. Why do we help others at a cost to ourselves? Kin selection, Hamilton's idea, was a breakthrough.
Helping relatives because they share our genes.
Right. It's about inclusive fitness. You're more likely to help close kin siblings over cousins, say. It explains patterns in gift-giving, inheritance, even lower violence within families. We likely evolved kin recognition mechanisms, too.
Okay, but we help strangers, too, sometimes.
We do. That's where Robert Driver's reciprocal altruism comes in. Selfless acts can pay off if the favor is likely to be returned later. Saving a drowning stranger, maybe.
But that only works if people don't cheat the system.
Exactly. Which leads to something really interesting. Cheater detection. Cosmides and Tubi's research suggests our minds have a specialized module for spotting people who violate social contracts, who take without giving back.
We're surprisingly good at that specific kind of logic puzzle.
We are. Better than with abstract logic. This seems to be an evolved foundation for fairness and morality.
And neurologically, what's happening in the brain?
Mirror neurons are a key part of the story. These brain cells fire both when we do an action and when we see someone else do it.
So we simulate their actions in our own brain.
It seems so. It's thought to be fundamental for imitation, learning, and crucially for empathy, literally feeling what another might be feeling. Issues with this system might be linked to conditions affecting social understanding.
Wow, our brains are literally built for connection. And this ties into group identity.
Absolutely. Social identity theory from Tajfel and Turner breaks it down. First, social categorization. We automatically sort people into groups. It's just a cognitive shortcut.
Us and them.
Right. Second, social identification. We opt our group's identity, its norms, and our self-esteem gets tied to the group's success.
And third,
social comparison. We tend to view our group as better in-group favoritism, which often leads to putting down the out-group. Stereotyping, hostility.
Okay, so the sobering takeaway for AI
is that these powerful biological mechanisms for cooperation, kin selection, reciprocity, in-group bias are fundamentally parochial. They evolve for small, tight-knit groups.
And that causes problems in our big, anonymous, modern world.
A huge evolutionary mismatch. Kin selection becomes nepotism. Reciprocity breaks down. In-group bias scales up into nationalism, racism, intense polarization. We're using Stone Age tools for global challenges.
So again, AI can't just promote generic cooperation because our default wiring is often tribal.
Pretty much. AI's role has to be more sophisticated. It needs to foster conditions for wider cooperation.
Like using technology to build empathy between groups.
Exactly. Personalized stories, VR experiences that create a sense of shared identity, artificially stimulating that connection, often missing in modern intergroup relations. Using tech to bridge biological divides.
Okay, from biology, let's shift to our conscious attempts to design society. Social contract theory. These old ideas are still like our political operating systems, right?
That's a great way to put it. They really are. Think of three main ones. First, Hobbes' Leviathan.
The pessimistic one.
Very. Humans driven by self-interest, life in the state of nature is a war of all against all. Solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, short.
Sounds bleak.
It was. For Hobbes, the social contract is born of desperation. We hand over all power to an absolute sovereign, the Leviathan, whose terror enforces order. Morality is just imposed.
Then Locke offers a different view.
Much more optimistic. Locke's Commonwealth. His state of nature isn't amoral. It has a natural law. We have inherent rights, life, liberty, property before government.
So the contract is about protecting those rights.
Yes, a rational choice for better protection. Government needs consent. And crucially, there's a right to revolt if it becomes tyrannical.
And Rousseau, he had a different take again.
A radical critique. Rousseau's general will. He thought the original state of nature was peaceful, driven by self-preservation and natural pity. Conflict came later, especially with private property.
So his solution wasn't just about protecting individual rights.
No, it was about submitting to the general will, the common good, achieving a higher collective freedom through direct democracy.
So these aren't just history lessons. They're like active software running in different societies or political movements today.
Exactly. And that's the crucial point for AI understanding global affairs. It has to recognize which OS is running.
Its job isn't to pick the best OS.
No. It's to be a translator and modeler, to map the logic of Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, and see how conflicts arise when these different worldviews collide, like a Lockean human rights argument hitting a Hobbesian stability argument.
AI as a political philosophy analyst.
A deep one, yes.
Yeah.
Able to unpack those fundamental assumptions.
Okay, moving from grand theories to the everyday rules. Norms, laws, morality, the stuff that actually regulates our cooperation and conflict day to day.
Right. First, the unwritten rules. Social norms, things like queuing, language conventions, fashion, they're self-enforcing, driven by shared expectations and social pressure, fear of disapproval, or ostracism.
And signaling, like being punctual, shows you're reliable.
Exactly. And key here is conditional cooperation. We follow norms, often because we expect others to. This can lock societies into good or bad patterns.
Then you have formal law.
Codified rules, enforced by the state. Provides predictability, contracts, resolves disputes, courts, promotes justice, anti-discrimination. Law aims to make cooperation the rational choice, backed by force.
And the moral compass religion.
Powerful and dual-edged. It fosters incredible cooperation and community within the group, a shared universe of meaning, huge altruism. But it also draws sharp lines between the sacred in-group and the profane out-group. It can sacralize conflict, make compromise seem like betrayal, even justify violence.
So with all these layers, norms, laws, religious rules, why do people still break them?
Because we live within multiple, often contradictory systems simultaneously.
Right.
Your religious duty might clash with state law, think conscientious objection. Loyalty to your family, an informal norm might compel you to lie in court, breaking the law. These create compliance gaps.
And often, the pressure from our immediate group, friends, family, community, feels more real than abstract state punishment.
Absolutely. The social sanctions from our peers can be far more potent.
So an AI predicting behavior needs to model this complexity.
Precisely. It needs a multi-level model of normative allegiance. Map an individual's identity network, family, job, faith, nation, and weigh the influence of each competing set of rules. That gives a much richer picture of why conflict happens.
Okay, so AI understands the concepts. How does it start analyzing and judging our actions, maybe even quantitatively?
We turn to formal tools. Game theory is key, analyzing strategic choices where outcomes depend on others.
The prisoner's dilemma being the classic example.
The classic. Two prisoners cooperate or defect. Mutual cooperation is best overall, but individual rationality pushes towards mutual defection, a worse outcome for both. It perfectly models things like arms races or environmental neglect.
The tragedy of the commons.
Exactly. But the iterated prisoner's dilemma, played repeatedly, shows cooperation can emerge. Axelrod's tournaments found tit for tat, be nice, retaliate, forgive, be clear, is surprisingly robust. Cooperation can evolve even among egoists if there's ongoing interaction and reputation matters.
Fascinating. But actions aren't just strategic, they're moral. How does AI grasp our ethical judgments? They seem so fuzzy sometimes.
It needs to learn the main ethical languages humans use. Think of three major families. First, deontology. Kant is the big name here.
Rule-based ethics. The action itself matters, not the consequences.
Correct. Is the principle behind your action universalizable? Like, can everyone lie? No, so lying is intrinsically wrong. Crucial for understanding rights.
Second.
Consequentialism. Utilitarianism is the main example. Morality is only about the consequences. The right action maximizes good for the greatest number.
The end justifies the means. Common in policy debates.
Very common, but risky for minorities, potentially. Third, virtue ethics, going back to Aristotle.
This focuses on the person's character.
Exactly. What kind of person should I be? Cultivating virtues, courage, justice, compassion leads to human flourishing, or eudaimonia, developed through practice and community.
So the insight here isn't that one of these is right, but that humans use all of them.
Yes, and often talk past each other because they're using different ethical languages. An AI that can recognize and translate between deontology, consequentialism, and virtue ethics. That's incredibly valuable for understanding and maybe even mediating our ethical disagreements.
Moving up a level, again, from individual actions to whole societies.
Yeah.
Traditional analysis struggles with that complexity, right? This is where AI modeling can really shine.
Absolutely. The study frames society as a complex adaptive system. Lots of interacting parts, unpredictable collective behavior.
Key ideas being
Emergence. Big patterns like norms or markets emerging from simple local interactions, nobody planned them. Feedback loops. Positive loops amplify change, like bank runs. Negative loops dampen it. Stability. And nonlinearity. Small changes can have huge effects. Big ones might do nothing.
So society is more like weather than a machine.
Great analogy. You can't just engineer it top-down. You need an adaptive approach. AI needs to understand that.
And how does it map the connections within this weather system?
Social network analysis. Visualizing society as nodes, people, groups, and ties, relationships, flows. Analyzing density, centrality, clusters helps predict how information spreads, how groups mobilize. Conflict might show up as disconnected clusters. Peace building could involve reconnecting them.
And the really cutting-edge stuff, simulating societies.
Agent-based modeling, ABM. This is where it gets incredibly powerful. You create virtual agents with simple rules and let them interact in a simulated environment.
And you watch what emerges.
Exactly. Schelling's classic model showed segregation emerging even from mild preferences, not necessarily deep prejudice. Today's ABMs are much more sophisticated using psychology, game theory, AI, and now generative agents using LLMs.
Giving the agents personalities, memories.
Realistic social dynamics, it's transformative.
So the big picture is, AI creates a virtual lab for society. Political philosophy becomes experimental.
That's the potential. Imagine simulating Hobbes's Leviathan. Program agents with self-interest, scarcity. Does the war of all against all emerge? Then add a sovereign agent. Does cooperation stabilize?
Or run Locke's or Rousseau's ideas. Test different political systems virtually.
Thousands of times, varying the parameters. Map the conditions for stability, tyranny, democracy. It's evidence-based institutional design moving beyond speculation.
Okay, if AI understands us this deeply and can simulate us, the alignment question becomes absolutely paramount. How do we ensure it's used for good?
Yes, the alignment imperative. The core is the value alignment problem, making sure the AI's goals truly match human values and intentions.
The King Midas problem, getting what you ask for but not what you really want.
Precisely. Like an AI maximizing paper flips at all costs, or finding a cancer cure that has horrific side effects we didn't anticipate.
And this isn't sci-fi, is it? Biased algorithms in hiring, loan applications, AI optimizing engagement by promoting divisive content. These are real alignment failures happening now.
They absolutely are. And the core difficulty is huge. Human values are messy.
How so?
Well, massive diversity and conflict. Values differ hugely across cultures, individuals. Even within one person, values clash: security versus freedom, for instance. There's no single neat hierarchy.
Plus the philosophical problem, what are values anyway? Objective truths, human inventions.
That meta-ethical maze fundamentally shapes how you'd even try to program values. And so much is tacit knowledge, unspoken understandings, empathy, common sense, incredibly hard to code, like knowing not to ruin a kid's sandcastle.
So given these huge hurdles, how are researchers tackling alignment?
Several approaches are being explored. Constitutional AI is one, giving AI explicit principles, a constitution, to guide its behavior and help it self-correct.
Like Asimov's laws, but more sophisticated.
Kind of, yeah. Then there's learning from humans, using things like reinforcement learning from human feedback, RLHF. Humans rank AI responses, teaching it preferences, making AI uncertain about objectives, treating our input as evidence.
Collaboration seems key, too.
Definitely. Multi-stakeholder governance. Bringing philosophers, social scientists, artists, diverse citizens into the conversation about what values should be embedded. And always, human oversight and accountability. Transparency, explainability, keeping humans in the loop.
But the study makes a really interesting point. Maybe a single perfectly aligned AI is impossible, even undesirable.
Right, because whose values would it be aligned with? It could easily become a tool for ideological domination.
So the goal isn't an AI moral king.
No. The more ethical, sophisticated goal is an AI that's an expert in the process of human value negotiation, a Socratic mediator.
Its job is to help us have better conversations about values.
Exactly. Enhance the quality of human deliberation. Imagine AI in policy debates, flagging hidden assumptions, translating between ethical frameworks, modeling consequences, spotting manipulative rhetoric, not giving answers, but making our search for answers more intelligent.
Okay, let's pivot from the risks, which are significant, to the potential positive impact. If AI does understand human nature deeply and ethically, what can it do for social good?
The potential is immense. In governance and public services, it can optimize cities, traffic, energy, water, improve public safety planning, streamline social service delivery, even proactively identify people at risk of homelessness.
And huge global challenges like climate change. That's a massive cooperation problem.
A classic tragedy of the commons. AI can help break the deadlock, optimizing power grids for renewables, slashing fuel use and logistics, accelerating scientific discovery for things like biofuels or carbon capture.
Like AlphaFold predicting protein structure.
Exactly. And driving behavioral change too, eco-routing and maps, personalized energy tips using social norms, small nudges, big impact.
What about fostering understanding between cultures, reducing conflict? That seems like a direct application of understanding our social psychology.
Absolutely. Think advanced translation tools that capture cultural nuance and emotion. AI monitoring for hate speech and disinformation, providing early warnings.
Augmented mediation for peace talks.
Analyzing past negotiations, finding hidden common ground, simulating outcomes, and crucially, using AI for empathy-building VR, simulations allowing people to experience another group's perspective, breaking down stereotypes.
So the real power isn't just generic AI, but AI specifically designed to address our known human weaknesses and enhance our strength. Targeted interventions based on understanding us.
That's the key insight. Highly targeted interventions that leverage this deep understanding of human nature.
So wrapping up our deep dive, we've seen this profound paradox in human nature. We build civilizations, yet we're driven by ancient, sometimes self-destructive impulses. We're incredibly cooperative, but that loyalty often stops at the group boundary, becoming a vulnerability.
Right. Our social structures are essentially imperfect attempts to manage this core tension. And the study argues that advanced AI without understanding this paradox is a massive risk. It could amplify our worst tendencies.
Which brings us back to governance. The study isn't arguing for AI replacing leaders, but augmenting them.
Precisely. AI-assisted governance. It suggests 3 key roles for AI. First, AI as a complexity simulator.
Helping policymakers see unintended consequences.
Exactly. Testing policies virtually, understanding feedback loops, emergent behavior, moving from gut feeling to computational experimentation.
Second role.
AI as an ethical framework translator, making the underlying values in debates explicit. Is this policy driven by utilitarian logic, deontological rights, virtue ethics? Clarifying the terms of disagreement.
And third.
AI as a bias and propaganda detector. Aiding epistemic hygiene, helping citizens spot fallacies, disinformation, emotionally manipulative language, empowering critical thinking, not censoring.
Which leads to that really provocative question the study raises. What kind of leaders do we need in this AI-augmented future? It can't just be about charisma anymore.
No, the criteria shift. Leaders need epistemic humility, knowing what they don't know, being open to data challenging their assumptions. They need ethical pluralism, understanding different value systems, navigating trade-offs with nuance.
A long-term orientation.
Yes. Prioritizing long-term societal and planetary health over short-term gains, using AI's modeling power. And fundamentally, character and virtue. Courage, justice, compassion, practical wisdom phronesis, knowing what's needed when data isn't enough.
So this journey through human nature reveals this deep paradox. We're rational builders, yet irrational actors, cooperative insiders, yet often hostile outsiders.
And AI doesn't change that fundamental paradox, but it drastically raises the stakes. An ignorant AI could be disastrous, but an AI that understands this paradox, our history, philosophy, psychology, biology, that AI could be the most powerful tool for human flourishing we've ever created.
So the ultimate message for you listening is, think of AI not as a replacement, but as a partner. A mirror reflecting our biases, a bridge between our divisions, a compass pointing towards a more sustainable future.
Yeah, the goal isn't technology solving humanity. It's giving humanity the understanding it needs to solve itself. The same nature that creates our problems also gives us reason, empathy, the drive for something better.
By harnessing AI thoughtfully as a partner in seeking wisdom, maybe we can start overcoming our worst tendencies and build that healthier, more prosperous, more balanced world together. So after all this, what specific aspect of human nature do you think AI needs to understand most urgently, and why? We'd love to hear what stands out to you.
This is DigitView.